On my wedding day, my bride said, "At least his credit card limits make this worth it." Her friend laughed and raised a glass. I whispered, "They're all cancelled." The next day, she was kicked out of the hotel room. "So, you're really doing this, huh?" Her friend Marlene laughed, swirling champagne in her glass. Myra, my wife for a total of 5 hours, smiled coyly and said, "Well, at least her credit card limits make this worth it." They laughed. I was standing just a few feet behind them. "I cancelled them all," I said softly. Myra's smile dropped. Marlene choked on her drink. I turned, walked away, and didn't speak to either of them again that night. This is a long one. I need to tell it all because I haven't really been able to talk about it with anyone who doesn't have some stake in it. This community has helped me before, and I guess this is me hoping that by writing it out, maybe it'll stop looping in my head. Maybe someone will read it and feel a little less alone. So, let's start at the beginning. My name is Delia. I'm 41. Financial advisor based in San Francisco. I've never been flashy, but I've done well for myself. I rent a really nice apartment near Pacific Heights, I drive a 2020 Lexus hybrid, and I love old jazz records and reading weird biographies. My life was relatively calm, full of routine, not a whole lot of drama. And I was okay with that. Maybe even proud of it. I met Myra at a networking event at the De Young Museum, one of those after-hours mixers with wine and just enough cheese to feel fancy. She was 32, sharp, quick-witted, magnetic. I remember the way she introduced herself like she was used to having a room orbit around her. She worked in digital marketing, mostly freelance campaigns for tech startups. The kind of person who used phrases like personal brand and intentional living and still managed to make it sound natural. We hit it off fast. Within a couple weeks, she was coming over every few nights. Within a couple months, she basically lived in my apartment. I should have asked more questions, in hindsight. About her money, her history, her long-term plans. But she seemed so self-sufficient. Always hustling, always on a deadline, always just one client away from her next big break. I didn't mind that she didn't contribute to rent much, she offered to cook, take care of errands, walk the dog. And I had the means, so it didn't feel like a big deal. Love makes you stupid in the softest ways. It dulls your instincts. Looking back, I think I wanted to believe we were building something real because I hadn't felt that way in years. Not since my early 30s. Myra made me feel alive again. And she was affectionate, warm, loving, always reaching for my hand in public, texting me sweet little messages during the day. She had this way of making me feel like I was her person. We got engaged after about 1.5 years. It wasn't a flashy proposal. Just us at home, wine on the table, a quiet conversation. I remember her tearing up and saying she never imagined getting married would feel so safe. God, that sentence hits me like a punch now. We decided on a spring wedding, and because Myra had always dreamed of a real wedding, I took the lead on planning. We booked the Fairmont Hotel, overlooking the city, floral arrangements from a boutique place in No Valley, a jazz trio for the reception, custom rings. She cried when she saw her dress. Said she never felt beautiful before that moment. I paid for everything. She didn't ask, exactly, it just happened that way. I didn't mind. At the time. Things started to shift maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the wedding. She got quieter. Less affectionate. Started staying out later, saying she was catching up with friends who were flying in early. I figured it was stress. Weddings can do that to people. And she wasn't great under pressure, I had seen that during her freelance gigs. The rehearsal dinner was where things cracked. That was the moment I felt something real and ugly stirring under the surface. Marlene, Myra's best friend and maid of honor, had flown in from LA. I'd never liked her. Too loud, too smirky. Always saying things with a tone that left just enough ambiguity that if you called her out, she could pretend you were being sensitive. At dinner, Marlene raised a toast, slurring slightly. To Myra, she said, for finally locking down a real one. At least her credit card limits make this worth it. Myra laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not a protest. She actually laughed. She raised her glass and clinked it with Marlene's. I sat there, pretending it didn't sting. I made a joke. People laughed. I stood up, smiled, walked out. And I canceled every single one of my credit cards. Called the banks. Closed the shared account we had opened in preparation for the honeymoon. Pulled all the cash from our joint emergency fund. Blocked her from accessing my Apple Wallet. I slept like a stone that night. The next day, the wedding day, was clear and bright. San Francisco in late March can be temperamental, but it was beautiful. Everyone looked amazing. The photos probably look like a dream. I walked down the aisle smiling. I said my vows. She said hers. We kissed. Everyone clapped. I smiled like everything was perfect. At the reception, I saw them, Myra and Marlene, by the bar, whispering, giggling, looking so smug. I inched closer, just enough to hear it. Do you think she'll notice the charges? Marlene asked, smirking into her flute. Not until next month, Myra said, her voice low but giddy. And by then, who cares? I stepped forward. They're all cancelled. My voice was low, calm, controlled. I didn't raise it. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. Marlene turned pale. Myra blinked like she didn't understand. I canceled every single one. Credit cards, joint account, travel bookings. Even your access to the hotel room. Enjoy the cake. Then I turned and walked straight to the lobby bar. I left her there. In her dress. With her fake smiles and hollow laughter. The next morning, I went down to the desk at the Fairmont and confirmed she had been removed from the room reservation. They told me she tried to get in, caused a scene. I wasn't there. I was at brunch with my sister. Eating sourdough pancakes and not answering my phone. By noon, her stuff was in the hotel storage room. Security stood by while she arranged an Uber to God knows where. I went home. Changed the locks. Called the landlord. Told him she'd moved out. Sent him copies of our lease. Everything was already in my name. She tried to come back later that week. Banged on the door. Cried. Yelled through the door. I sat on the couch with Percy curled up next to me and waited it out. She stopped coming after that. I haven't heard from her since. Thanks for sticking with me. There's still a lot more to this. It didn't just end with her getting kicked out of the hotel and me locking the door behind her. That might have been the climax, but real life doesn't wrap itself up in a single dramatic moment. After the dust settled, the real aftermath began. In the days that followed, I floated between this strange numbness and waves of absolute disbelief. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry in the way people expected me to be. It was more like my brain couldn't fully compute what had just happened. Like someone had redrawn the lines of my reality without warning, and I was walking through it like it was a dream. People started calling. My sister, Louise, was the first. She didn't know the whole story, just that Myra wasn't at the hotel anymore and I had canceled the honeymoon. She wanted to come over. I told her no. I needed time to think, to breathe. Myra tried texting the next day. Just one message. Delia, can we talk? I didn't answer. Then a longer one the day after, I don't know what's going on. Please don't let Marlene's stupid joke ruin everything. I didn't mean it like that. Can we talk? Please. I still didn't respond. 3 days later, she tried calling from a blocked number. I picked up, thinking it might be one of my clients. I was still trying to hold things together with work. The voice on the other end was quiet. Delia, it's me. I hung up. That was the last time I ever picked up a call I didn't recognize. I guess part of me was waiting for her to come clean, to say something that resembled an apology, or even just honesty. But it never came. Her texts became angrier over time. She blamed me for embarrassing her, accused me of being cold, called me vindictive. I didn't answer any of them. I screenshotted every single message. Backed them up. Created a folder. I didn't know if I'd need them, but my instinct told me to be cautious. And then came the rumors. Mutual acquaintances started reaching out, some who'd been at the wedding, others who only saw the filtered Instagram photos. I didn't tell them much. Just that it was over and I didn't want to talk about it. But Myra? She talked. A lot. I found out she was telling people I had manipulated her, that I had blindsided her, that I kicked her out without any warning or explanation. That she didn't have access to her things, a lie, her bags were at the hotel with her. That I'd turned into someone unrecognizable overnight. At first, it bothered me. A lot. The unfairness of it all. I started drafting responses in my head, imagining what I'd say to set the record straight. I even wrote out a message once and hovered over the post button on Facebook. Then I remembered something my therapist said years ago during my first real heartbreak: if someone is determined to misunderstand you, no explanation will ever be enough. So I let her talk. People believe what they want to believe anyway. My focus turned inward. I started reviewing everything from our relationship. Not the surface memories, the dinners, the vacations, the nights in bed. I started paying attention to the things I had ignored. Like how her Venmo was always full of pending payments to her friends. How she always needed to borrow cash because a client hadn't paid her yet. How she had convinced me that moving in with me would help her focus more on work and save money for our future. How she insisted we use my cards for most things, and said she'd handle the wedding details, but somehow ended up just selecting the most expensive options and leaving me with the bills. She hadn't just hurt me emotionally. She had been draining me, little by little, for months, maybe longer. I pulled all my credit reports. Froze my accounts. Called every vendor from the wedding and requested final invoices. Made sure nothing had slipped through the cracks. There were a few surprise charges. A hotel booking in her name, dated 2 weeks before the wedding, in Sausalito. A spa package from a place in Napa. A luxury handbag purchase I didn't recognize. They'd gone through on a joint credit card I'd forgotten I had left open, one with a low limit, thankfully. I disputed them all. And then I sat down and wrote a letter. Not to her. To myself. It was part journaling, part reflection, part something else. I guess I wanted to document the way this felt in real time. So that later, when I started to question my memory or soften the truth, I could read it and remember. Because the thing is, people like Myra don't show their teeth right away. They charm you. They mirror your values. They learn how to talk about pain in a way that makes you want to protect them. And when you fall in love with them, you don't even realize you've handed them a map to every one of your weak spots. And then they start picking you apart. Quietly. Gently. With a smile. The manipulation wasn't loud. It was casual, almost elegant. She didn't scream or fight. She just suggested. Gently guided. Framed things in ways that made me feel like doing more, giving more, helping more, was the loving thing to do. And the more I gave, the more she withdrew. It was never enough. I started going on long walks around the Marina Green with Percy. Sometimes I'd loop all the way down to Crissy Field and just sit there with coffee, watching the waves roll in under the Golden Gate Bridge. Some mornings, I felt strong. Other mornings, I'd see couples walking together, sharing headphones, laughing, and I'd feel something deep and hollow open up inside me. Grief is weird like that. It's not just about the person. It's about the version of yourself you thought existed in that relationship. The version that believed. And she broke that. Not in one swoop, but slowly, in the quiet corners where I let my guard down. I started therapy again. And yeah, I'll get to what happened when I finally talked to a lawyer, and the unexpected twist that came a few weeks later, because yes, there was one, but I think I need to pause here for now. Writing this is a lot more exhausting than I thought it would be. Alright, thanks again to those still reading. I didn't expect to feel this kind of emotional fatigue writing it all out, but I also didn't expect how much clarity it would give me. Picking up from where I left off. Therapy was something I'd dipped in and out of over the years, but after Myra, I knew I needed to take it seriously again. I found a therapist in the inner Richmond neighborhood, not too far from me, but far enough that I could get a bit of air before and after our sessions. Her name was Clarice. Early 60s, soft-spoken, didn't smile much but had a face that made you feel seen. She never said more than she needed to. I appreciated that. I spent the first 2 sessions basically retelling everything I've written here, the wedding, the overheard comment, the financial sabotage. I remember finishing the whole story and Clarice sitting quietly for a moment before finally saying, "You didn't just lose a relationship. You lost a lie you were still half believing." That sentence hit me like cold water. Because she was right. Some part of me, even after it all, was still trying to make sense of it through the lens of we had something real, and she changed. But that's not true. Myra didn't change. She just finished her performance. That was hard to admit. 3 weeks after the wedding I got an email from her. Not a text. An actual email. The subject line read, "Let's handle this like adults." She had written what I can only describe as the most insincere, vaguely threatening piece of full legal nonsense I'd seen in a long time. She accused me of abandoning her without financial recourse, humiliation in front of guests, and severe emotional distress. She claimed she was entitled to half of all shared assets and any jointly acquired property during our engagement and marriage. The entire thing was a parade of buzzwords she must have Googled or had help writing. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer. Yes, I had hired a lawyer. Not because I thought I'd need one long term, but because I'd gotten paranoid. And I'm glad I did. Her name was Candace. Young, sharp, no nonsense, with a specialty in family law. She read the email and sent me back a single sentence, "She doesn't have a leg to stand on." Turns out, I'd done more to protect myself than I realized. All the accounts were mine. The apartment lease was only under my name. The wedding expenses had been paid for entirely from my personal accounts. The car? Mine. Percy? Adopted under my name. We weren't even legally married. I know, I haven't mentioned that part yet, and it might come as a surprise. See, in California, the officiant has to submit the marriage license within 10 days of the ceremony. But Myra never did. She was supposed to. She had insisted on handling it herself, saying she wanted to take care of something for once, since I'd planned the whole wedding. I had signed the form. So had our officiant. I gave it to Myra in a sealed envelope. She never mailed it in. I found out from the county clerk's office when I went in to request a certified copy for my records. The clerk checked the system, frowned, and said, "I'm not seeing anything filed under either of your names." It was like a pit opened in my stomach. I walked out of there and just sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel. Was she planning on not filing it the whole time? Was the wedding always part of some long con? Was the performance enough to get what she wanted out of it? I may never know. But I do know this, if she had filed it, things would have gotten a lot messy. A legal marriage, especially without a prenup, could have opened the door to claims on my assets. But because she never filed it, our wedding was a very expensive, very public piece of theater. Nothing more. Candace confirmed it. Technically, you were never married. Emotionally? That's another story. But legally, you're in the clear. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Meanwhile, Myra kept reaching out. Her messages varied wildly, some angry, some desperate, some pitiful. At one point, She even sent me a long voice note that started with "You owe me at least a conversation" and ended with "I never should have trusted someone like you." I blocked her everywhere. But even as I blocked her, I felt haunted by the weight of it all. Not because I missed her, but because I hated the version of myself that had missed all the signs. The quiet ways I'd betrayed my own intuition to hold on to a fantasy. My therapist called it emotional gaslighting of the slow burn kind. When someone weaponizes your empathy against you, she said, you don't feel the cut until you're already bleeding. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. I filled a whole journal in 2 weeks. Pages and pages of thoughts, half memories, realizations I hadn't faced during the relationship. Like the time she asked me if I could prepay her rent while she waited on a client payment. Or how she'd guilt me when I wanted a night to myself. Or the time she cried after I suggested we talk to a financial advisor before opening a shared account. She knew exactly how to play the part of the injured party. I was starting to put myself back together. Slowly. But it was happening. Then, one morning in late April, I got a letter in the mail. A real letter. No return address. Just my name, first and last, on the envelope, handwritten. I opened it slowly, already bracing myself. It was from Myra. No threats this time. No demands. Just words. A stream of consciousness apology that read more like a confession. She said she never mailed the license because something felt off and she panicked. She said she knew I deserved better, that she didn't know how to love someone like me, that she hated herself for how she acted but hated me more for not giving her one more chance. She said, you always made me feel safe, and that made me feel small. That line stuck with me. Because I think, for the first time, she was telling the truth. I folded the letter. Put it back in the envelope. I didn't rip it up. I didn't burn it. I didn't forgive her either. I just put it in the back of a drawer and left it there. I haven't looked at it since. I'll pick up again soon with what I did after, how I slowly started to reclaim my life, and one unexpected connection that helped me through it. But for now, this feels like the right place to pause. Thank you for your patience. This is the final part of the story, and yeah, it ends with a form of revenge. Not the cruel or dramatic kind, but the kind that tastes like peace. That quiet, steady satisfaction of knowing you came out on the other side intact, wiser, and untouchable. Let's get into it. After I received that letter from Myra, the one where she half apologized, half blamed me, I didn't respond. I never planned to. That was her last real attempt at contact, and after that, the silence became its own kind of freedom. But here's where things get poetic. About 2 months after the wedding, I was at an alumni fundraiser for my old college. Nothing big, just one of those rooftop wine and cheese things in the financial district. A woman named Celine, an old friend of a friend, was there. She worked in executive recruitment and remembered me from a few years back when I helped her cousin manage a tricky inheritance. We started talking. Nothing romantic. But over the next couple of weeks, we started bumping into each other more, at community events, through mutual friends, even at the same cafe. She was poised, brilliant, early 50s, never married, no kids, and lived in a charming old house out in Berkeley with a massive garden and a grumpy orange cat named Simon. One day, over lunch, I mentioned Myra, without too many details, and Celine paused. Wait. Myra Feldman? Digital marketing? I nodded slowly. She raised her brows. Delia, she applied for a contract position at my firm. I blinked. When? Just last week. Small world. The universe has a wicked sense of humor sometimes. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't want to turn this into some petty personal vendetta. But Celine pressed gently for more context. And eventually, I told her the truth. All of it. Every detail. Not in anger, not to ruin Myra, but simply so she'd understand what kind of person had walked into her office pretending to be someone she wasn't. Celine's face grew still. We vet everyone carefully, she said. But I appreciate the insight. That aligns with a few other red flags. And that was that. Or so I thought. A week later, Celine texted me, she didn't get the contract. And not just because of what you told me. But it helped. That felt like the first true exhale I'd had in weeks. Not because she was punished, but because she couldn't keep faking it forever. The thing about people like Myra is, eventually, their behavior catches up with them. Their charm stops working when the patterns become visible. You don't need to ruin them. You just need to tell the truth. But the best part? A month or so later, a colleague forwarded me a new profile on a freelance platform. It was Myra. New photo, same name, different city, she had moved back to Bakersfield. I could tell by her sad attempt at rebranding, holistic digital strategist for women-owned businesses. I checked the page out of curiosity. There were 2 reviews. Both 1 star. One read, overpromised, underdelivered. Asked for an advance, never completed the work. Another read, disorganized, unprofessional. Do not recommend. She was spiraling. Not in a public meltdown kind of way. Just, slowly unraveling under the weight of her own patterns. It was exactly the ending that fit someone like her. No police, no lawsuits. Just the world quietly catching up. As for me? I didn't just survive. I leveled up. I moved out of the apartment and bought a small 2-bedroom place in the Sunset District with a yard big enough for Percy to run in. I started offering financial literacy workshops for women in transitional phases, divorcees, widows, newly single professionals. I called it Reclaiming Wealth. It wasn't about revenge. It was about building something from the ashes. But still, I won't lie. There's a deep, soul-satisfying sense of balance knowing that the woman who tried to exploit me, laugh at me, and humiliate me for her own gain, ended up stuck right where she started. And me? I'm in love again. Not with Celine. We remained good friends, and she's actually seeing someone else now. But I met someone last fall, her name is Renee. She's kind in the way Myra pretended to be. She listens more than she speaks. She sends me playlists and remembers little things I say in passing. When I told her about what happened, weeks into dating, she looked at me and said, "I'm sorry that happened to you. And I'm really glad you're still open." That sentence? That was the moment I realized the healing had worked. So no, I never got an apology that meant anything. I never got justice in the classic sense. But I got clarity. I got peace. And I got my life back, richer, quieter, and real. And that's the kind of revenge that lasts. Thanks to everyone who followed this. Writing it all out has been cathartic in ways I didn't expect. If you're someone who's ever been used, lied to, or made to feel like your kindness was a weakness, you are not alone, and you are not broken. The best revenge isn't pain, it's peace. And peace is mine now.